So, a translator's ready already? Is there anything with the translators already? You have to, maybe it's channel 2? Yeah, it's there. She's there. Okay, great. So, good afternoon. Welcome back. Now there's a psychiatrist talking when we are having a conference on oncology. And this is not a mistake. It's maybe a little bit weird. Most psychiatrists are a little bit weird, so me too. Anyway, I'm supposed to talk mainly about the mental aspects. And as you know, also in oncology, people have a lot of anxiety, depression, and pain. So this is one reason. The second reason is, if you look at lifestyle medicine and research on lifestyle for specific disorders, like, let's say, for oncology problems or for infection or mental health, basically it's all the same. If you do something which is healthy for your mind, it's usually also healthy for your body and vice versa. So I'm going to speak with you about lifestyle changes for mental health, but a lot of it is also true for your physical health and for oncology. So my first question is, are we getting older in the last years? Okay, except for the last 3 years. Until very recently, are we getting older? Yes. Are we getting more healthy? No. So, to put it very simple, until recently, Paula is right, very recently we saw that the life expectation is going down now. For about 30 years it was increasing all the time. And there's many reasons. In America, for instance, is due to the opioid pain crisis. It's getting a lot of casualties, but also due to our lifestyle. And the fact that we are getting less healthy is also a lot to do with lifestyle. How about mental health? Is this increasing as well? No. It went down recently. Why is that? What was the biggest factor in the last 5 years? COVID, yeah. So here's one slide from the Dutch sample. You can see here 90, 20, 21 in colors. And you can see that on total, people experiencing being mentally unhealthy has been increased with 50% in the year of COVID. This was due to the infection itself, but also due to the measurements which were taking, like the social distancing and many other things. And especially for young people and for people, elderly people who were already isolated before, it got even worse due to COVID and the measurements for that. So there's a challenge for us, for all of us. I think my laptop likes proximity, so if you go here, yeah, then it's better. So also, if you look at generations, this is one kind of way of looking at the health of generations. We have all different names, maybe you know this. We have the baby boomers just after the World War, then it was the Generation X and the millennials. We see, and now we have Generation Z. All the time, mental health is declining over the years. Also already before COVID, but even more after that. So, how do you think psychiatry is doing? If you have to give a grade between 0 and 10, what is the quality of the mental health system in Italy? Okay, let's talk about the system, about the system we have. How good do you think it functions? No opinion? 5, 6, 7, 8, 3, 1, 2, 3. Wow. More, yeah, you think also. Others? Anyone more optimistic? No. Okay. Okay, I think it's similar to Holland. I think usually I get about rates about 4 or 5. So maybe it's here, it's even worse. I don't know all the reasons, but I think there's a lot of challenges for psychiatry. So, for instance, as I already mentioned, many psychiatric diseases are increasing. We see that about 60% of patients can be treated with evidence-based psychiatry with some success, but usually it's less symptoms. This is mostly the criteria of a treatment. And Michel this morning already explained that when we want to cure people, when we want to be healthy, it takes more than only suppressing symptoms. But I feel that in my field, it's usually a lot of emphasis on having less symptoms and not always curing. Then we have the industry of the influence of the industry. We have side effects, waiting lists, high costs which are rising all the time, the stigma of mental health problems, and people working there. We don't have enough people, and they are getting the shortage is getting even bigger because we are all getting older, so we need more help. And we see also that there is a burnout in staff working in this system. So we have measured in Holland that there's a need in about 1 in every 4 person in the population. About a quarter of the Dutch population has a wish to be treated for mental health issues. But we have a capacity only for 7%. So this will never work. Not with a little bit of adjustments. We need a complete system change if we really want to adapt to all the wishes and needs which are there. And so in America, I think in Italy probably the same, we say now there is a crisis going on. But I want to be honest and balanced. I have to say that in some countries, and Holland is one of them, psychiatry is not doing so bad. If you look at all the parameters, the way you can make like a diagnosis of the system, we are doing quite well actually. We are in the top 5%, I get you, to the top 5% of countries around the world. If you look at how it is being afforded by people, if it's being accessible, the rates they give themselves to the system. So it's not going so bad, but at the same time, we have a lot of challenges. And this, we could call it a crisis, or maybe a crisis is coming. And perhaps in America and Italy it's getting more clear. No, Bernd is asking if there's a need in 24% of the population, and you would have a system which could not adapt for 7, but also for 24%, would it then solve the problem? I don't think so, because we couldn't pay for it. We wouldn't have the staff to work in there. And maybe even more fundamentally, this is an old system which is based on, I have a problem, I go to the doctor, and the doctor is fixing my problem. But and so my main point is in line with your idea, Bernard, and that is saying we need to take more care of ourselves for our health. Of course, there are situations when we have a very severe depression or we are suicidal, we also need help. But now I see about 3/4 of people who are treated in mental health care could, to some extent, help themselves. And this is what this talk is about. And this was not only invented by myself, I've learned from other people, and this sign was important for me. This was shown by this man. Maybe you know him, anyone? David Severin Schreiber. He was a very famous professor of psychiatry in Pittsburgh and then later also in Paris. His father was a very well-known politician in France. And he was very famous for writing books for the general public, explaining what we ourselves we can do for better. First about psychiatry, and later when he got a brain tumor, he wrote about cancer. And this is the bridge also to today. So what happened One day, David was doing research on changes in the brain due to depression and trauma. And then when he was doing this research with brain images, he had to have a control. So people who are not sick, but make brain images as well from them, so he could see what is due to the cause of the disease. But his volunteer didn't come. So they were sitting there, they hired very expensive place in the MRI, and nobody there. So he thought, well, I will go in there. I will be the control myself, you do the measurements, he told his colleagues, I will go in there. So he is there in the MRI, and then he doesn't hear anything, so the communication system, maybe it's not working, why they're not doing anything, laying there, and his colleagues on the other side were looking at a screen showing his brain with a tumor like this in his head. So they didn't need a specialized radiologist to explain to them that there was a tumor. It was very clear. And to make a long story short, he was treated, he was operated, he got chemotherapy, and then when he was recovered, he said to his oncologist, thank you so much for helping me, I'm very grateful, but is there anything I can do myself to be able to keep my health, so I don't have to come back to you? And then the oncologist said, there's nothing you can do, pray it won't happen, and if it does, come back to me. This is the old system, like Bernard was referring to. This is the old system where the doctor says, all of the outcome of health problems is due to me. I'm the only one responsible. I can take care of it. I will fix you, and then you go back to society. This is not true, and it's too expensive also. We don't have people for that. So then he was one of the early people talking about lifestyle psychiatry, and he went on his own way to see what can you do with lifestyle changes. And David was also a friend. He also came once here in Albagnano, and we talked for many times, and he explained how he did, and I learned from that. And he said this sign, he learned from Chinese, this is the sign for a crisis situation. When there is a crisis, there is two components. One component is danger. The other component is change or opportunity, if you will. So it means if there is a crisis, it also is an opportunity for change. And things can sometimes more easily change if the system breaks down. So I think this is a very good way of seeing it, not only as a danger, but also as an opportunity. So with this in mind, about 18 years ago, we started an outpatient clinic, psychiatry, to treat patients not only with medication and cognitive behavioral therapy, but also with lifestyle changes and herbal medicines, as Paolo showed this morning. And we advise them when they want to use other kinds of medicines like acupuncture or healing or stuff. We have our clinic is for people who didn't respond to more first-line treatment. So on average, they have been sick and treated for 11 years before they come to our clinic. And most of them are suicidal or very desperate. And I get a lot of requests for euthanasia, end of life, for mental disorders. This is something that is possible in Holland. I never did, but I talked to many people who request this, and it is a sign usually of a lot of despair and not knowing anywhere where to go. So when they come to our clinic, we help them with the same model that Elkena was explaining before. It's based on integrative medicine. So again, the therapeutic relationship is central. And maybe you will question, why do you have to mention it? Isn't it obvious? I'm afraid not so. Because in our enthusiasm for scientific research and protocols and managed care, we have lost sight of the patient sometimes. And I give you one example. I'm supervising young doctors, and one of them was doing an intake with the patient, and I was there to judge him. And he felt so much stress of all the protocols he has to follow and all the system that he already starts typing when he was still doing the interview to spare time. So he was like, you have this? Okay, and he wrote down, you also have this? Don't. So he was all the time doing this and looking at his screen instead of looking at the patient. So at one time, the patient took his chair and he put like this so he could also look at the screen. So both of them were looking in the screen and not to each other. And I'm not criticizing him, but I'm criticizing the system that makes us forced to have no more time, and we are also overstressed if we try to do the administration during the interview. And this is why we have to put the relationship again central. So one of the solutions we found is we ask everything you would normally ask during an interview before they come to our center. So we ask them to fill out all these questions. And they bring this to the conversation, and when I'm talking to the patient, I can take my time more easily to focus on what has to be said during the interview. Maybe there's a trauma, maybe there's a huge concern, and all the rest of the information is already there. So it gives a little bit more space. Then we don't want to take only the symptoms away, we also want to increase health and well-being. This is a huge issue. I'm not going into detail now, but this is one of the aspects of our taking care. Then a broad vision, holistic vision, and we have 4 elements. So I'm going to focus on lifestyle and say a few words on the other 4 steps of our approach. What is lifestyle? It's a difficult one, actually. You could say, if you could, a broad definition would be everything we do on a regular basis, or even do, say, and feel, or think. It's all part of our lifestyle. But to make it more easy, we have taken 8 components which could be addressed in medical care and who have an influence on our mental health. These we already heard today: nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, also using tobacco, alcohol, and drugs, relationships, and I add 2. One is spirituality, I will talk about it tomorrow, and the other one is the use of these kind of things. Is this familiar? It's all these things on your mobile phones, on your laptops, all these kind of media which all the time draw your attention with push messages and likes and stuff like this. I have a lot of concern about that, but we'll come back to that later. So these 8 we work with. I'm going to go a little bit quick, like give an overview, and then I'd like to show you how we do in clinical practice, because today we hear a lot of theory. I think it's also important for you to see how we work with patients, right? I'm here. Okay, so this is maybe with light a little bit difficult to see. This is a very important slide, because this is one slide where the WHO calculated how much these factors contribute to health. So in other words, here says medical care is only responsible for 11% of our health. Remember the conversation we just had and Bernard's question. Most doctors have this idea still that we are the ones responsible for the health of patients. But actually we are a minority. We are only 11%. A much larger prediction or explanation of health is genes and biology. We heard about this today a lot. But even more social circumstances. Katie talked about the importance of early life adversity, people who have difficulty in their early lives in relation with their upbringing or their peer groups. It has a large influence. But look here, the largest, by far the biggest contribution of our health is individual behavior. I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter where you grow, because people who grow up in difficult circumstances, it's much more difficult for them to change. We have to acknowledge this. So we make this joke, it is not your genetic code, it's your zip code that determines your health. Zip code means which area of the city you live, right? This has to be said, but still, even though individual behavior is where we are. And there is one more reason why we emphasize this. This is your own circle of influence. I can be very angry at the pharmaceutical industry, or the smoking industry, or the meat industry, or the alcohol industry, or the politicians. I can be angry all day and my monkey mind can go all the time. It doesn't solve a problem. I better put all of this energy in what I can influence myself, my own behavior. And this is also due to, because we make a lot of decisions regarding lifestyle during the day. Who dares to make an estimate? How many decisions we make every day concerning our lifestyle? 10? 100? 1,000? No ideas? Let's see. 35,000 decisions each day. Shall I sit down or walk? Shall I eat, drink? Shall I take this offer? Shall I not take this offer? Shall I go sleep early, not sleep early, etc. All the time. And most of these decisions we make unaware. So we are not aware what we are doing. And we are unaware, then the things which are automatically stored inside ourselves will run the show. And the difficulty is, usually this is not the most healthy ones. This is why we can look at lifestyle. So, take a few examples. One of the major concerns regarding diet, we heard many things today already. One of it is that this kind of, let's call it some kind of food, is 70% of the supermarket. And this is called ultra-processed foods, which means it's basically empty. It fills, but there's no content. And there's a lot of things inside which make us sick. It's even now established that it meets the criteria of an addictive substance, which means if you eat for about 7 days these kind of things, you can measure in the brain that the craving increases. So you get hooked, similar to cocaine and heroin. If you use a few times, you also get hooked. It may be a strong comparison, but I think it's really a problem. And we also know that young children get about 2/3 of their energy intake by these kind of things, which is really a concern for the future. It's linked to chronic disease, heart disease, and it's also bad for the environment, because making all of this consumes the environment as well. Outer environment and also for the inner environment. So one simple advice would be, don't eat anything that your grandparents wouldn't have recognized as food. Then you can skip most of these things. Another example is sugar. We already heard today about sugar. Be careful not to eat too much. Well, actually, we are all in the same problem already. Because if you look in 1700, we took 2 kilograms of sugar each year a person. In 1800 it was 5 times more, it was 10 kilograms. In 1900 it was 20 times more, 40 kilograms. A few years ago it was 80 and continues all the time. And maybe you think, I don't eat sugar. You are wrong, because sugar is now disguised in about 52 different kind of words. You have all kinds of oses. So if you look at whatever you like to eat and you look what's in there, it may be that there is sugar in disguise. And this is a big problem. This is one of the reasons we get so much of it inside of ourselves. Also, all of this sugar leads to low-grade inflammation, which is a risk factor for many diseases, as we heard today. So this is one other problem we have as a Western culture, more than other cultures. Okay. On the other side, if we change our diet, we can even eat ourselves out of our depression. So if you take a typical Western diet and you change it to a Mediterranean diet, which means no processed foods, a lot of greens, olive oil, these kind of things, then we see at a high level of evidence and meta-analysis that it diminishes our depression. So you can eat yourself out of your depression. Sounds more attractive than taking a pill, no? It's more tasty and perhaps also more cheap. But we have another problem with eating, and that is we eat all the time. If you look at history, in evolution, there were times when there was no food. So it was very normal that there were times when we were fasting. Fasting is far more natural than not fasting. And the problem now, food is everywhere all the time. So if you are not aware, before you know it, you are eating, maybe when you're distracted, calling somebody or doing your job, and all the while eating, but you cannot change your behavior if you're not aware. So my advice on this concern would be, don't eat all the time. This is the basic advice. You can go in all different kind of specialized ways of fasting. For instance, intermittent fasting. It's fine, it works. You can also fast for a day or for a week, whatever you like. You can do fasting with a little bit juice or no juice, or water, no water. It's all possible. It doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. The only thing is, please remember, don't eat all the time. That's all. And that is very healthy. And all the things you see here at these slides, that it reduces all the risk for heart disease, too high blood pressure, triglycerides, your waist, everything will change due to this. So don't go into very complex diets. It could help, but maybe the best is just to eat healthy, but don't eat all the time. It's also connected to running, and this one is also interesting. It's not that diabetes, heart disease, and obesity runs in your family. It's that no one runs in your family. And this points to, we have a new epidemic. Before it was smoking, now it is sitting still. Again, we are doing also now. So on average, how many hours does an adult sit still during the day? What do you think? It's 9 to 10 hours we sit still. On top of that, we lie in bed for another 8 or 9 hours, so there's almost no time to move anymore. And movement is healthy for all disorders we have, mental and physical. So the advice here would be to try to get at least 5 times half an hour of exercise, and also some strength exercise for muscles and bones. And don't sit still all the time. If we don't do, we have a risk for obesity. And this is a slide David Schreiber also used in his conference many years ago, and he was showing then already that you can see in the 80s there were about 10 to 20% of the American population was overweight, and about 15 years later it was doubled, it was again doubled, and if you would do it now, it's all dark red and black. So it's now a real concern all around the world. Elkena also mentioned it today. Almost half of the population is overweight. Other half has hunger. So we have 2 extremes around the world, which is really sad in a way. Again, if we would change, you can run your way out of your anxiety or your depression. We see it's highly effective. So I'm not sure you are familiar with things like effect size, but an effect size means if you do scientific research and you can show that people get better, how large is the effect? Now, to give you an example for running therapy, if you take an antidepressant against depression, so you take a pill, you will have an effect size of around 0.6, 0.8. Running therapy is the same. So running therapy is as effective as taking antidepressants, but the side effects are not negative but positive. So instead of getting problems with your glucose and your fats, you will have better sleep, less weight, better sex life. Running therapy is evidence-based for a better sex life. I always use this as a motivation for people. It somehow works. And then We have nutrition, exercise, then there is stress. And the good thing about being one of the last speakers is you can quickly go, because Ketty already explained beautifully how difficult it is to have chronic stress. These are all stressors in our lives. This is a typical life of a lot of stimulation of all of these smartphones and stuff, multitasking, instant gratification. We don't want to wait anymore. We are rushing, walking 10% faster now than 10 years ago, and we go around all the time. So the amount of information that's coming to us is increasing every year, and it's about 5% each year. So today, I talked about this last night as well, we process about 74 gigabytes of information each day, which is about 16 movies. This is the same as somebody in 500 years ago would process in a whole lifetime. We process, just think about it, we process as much information in one day as 500 years people would process in a whole life. 74 gigabytes. So no wonder we are overstressed. And then we have this kind of thing. We already hear about this. So we get stress, fear, and then we fight or flight, several other ones. And we can balance this with the nervus vagus, which is the nerve that helps us to balance again. So we have a gas and a brake, and these two should go balance each other. But if we are too much stressed, too long, then we get a problem. And we talked about patients today a lot. Let's look at ourselves. So the professionals, how are we doing? If you look at stress levels, not so good. What you can see here, this is the amount of medical specialists who say about themselves that they are burned out or depressed. I don't know about you, but I was shocked when I first saw these figures. This means that 1/3 to half of all medical specialists themselves think about themselves they are depressed or burned out. Doesn't sound so healthy to me. So I think we have also an overstressed system. And when patients tell us, I feel the way you look, then something is going wrong. So then, because of all of the stress, we get tired. So what do we do when we get tired? Like La Michelle told us this morning, we don't want to look, why am I so tired? Perhaps I should do less. I should maybe balance my life. No, we push away the tiredness, right? Me too, I also do. For instance, with coffee. So you can see here in the last 30 years, this is the amount of increase in coffee consumption around the world. And it's controlled with the growth of the population. So we are drinking more coffee all of the time. Interestingly, what happens if you drink a lot of coffee? You get stressed. How do you de-stress at the end of the day? Alcohol or medication. So we have the same line. If an increase in coffee, we see the increase in sedatives. It's interesting, no? So we have this tendency in the morning to stress ourselves and in the evening to numb ourselves. This is a similar slide, also the world population. This is the United States. It's the same around the world. And then there is social media. And Lame, you talked about this before, also your concern about the effects of social media. So I took one of the reviews, recent reviews about the effects of social media on health and mental health. And you can see here that all domains of the time spent on social media, the activities they have, it's all correlated with depression, anxiety, and distress. If you read posts, it's more bad for your health than if you actively post, interestingly. So making posts is less bad than only reading? Well, there is a lot. Basically, it's saying that the more we spend on social media, the more risk we have for mental health problems. And yesterday I also explained it has a lot to do with the system in our cells, which is dopamine. So every time we have a post and we see all the likes or the thumbs or the hearts coming, then we get some kind of recognition or some kind of stimulation, and this gives a burst of dopamine. The problem with dopamine is it doesn't stay. It go high and it go down directly. So, in other words, it cannot sustain a feeling of well-being. Even worse, it's an enemy of well-being. Because if you have a lot of dopamine, you get a craving for more. So you want more likes and more posts. And it takes down the other one, serotonin. So the more dopamine we have, the lower our serotonin goes. And that creates, of course, anxiety and depression. And chronic stress, as Katie showed us, drives them both down. So this is something really should be a concern of all of us. The more pleasure or the more kicks we seek, things which give us a burst of dopamine, the more unhappy we get and the more unhealthy we get. And this is, I think, social media and YouTube and all of these things have a risk in here. So if we change to the other side, if we have a more healthy diet, if we exercise more, if we sleep enough, if we don't go too much on the internet and social media, we will improve, and it has to do with a few factors. Already explained today, I'm not going to take much time. Epigenetics is one of them, which influences our genes in the way that they are expressed. So to put it simple, a right lifestyle will activate the right genes. So you can activate healthy genes and deactivate sick genes, and that is the way epigenetics work. And something similar is our neuroplasticity. Our brain is also very adaptive. I showed last night that there's all kinds of connections, and these connections are being made and being undone and done all the time. And this process allows us to adapt all the time to whatever is happening inside of us and outside of us. And this is another explanation how simple things like lifestyle changes can have a huge effect on our health. It's epigenetics, it's neuroplasticity, it's chronic stress, it's the microbiome. There are several explanations how lifestyle works. And so we know a bad lifestyle is bad for our health, a good lifestyle is good for our health, we know it works, we know how it works, we even know it's very cost effective if you do so. Because if we invest $1 in a healthy diet, we get a return on investment on a population level of about 12. $1, 12 come back. If we invest $1 in alcohol, of course less alcohol, $8 come back. Smoking, 1.7 comes back. So it works. We know how it works. It's effective. It has positive side effects, and it gives you more money. Let's do it, right? So we all have a healthy lifestyle now. Okay, so who has ever had a good intention to change his lifestyle for the better, but did not succeed? Yeah, thank you for being honest, everybody. So, if we have no guidance with changing our lifestyle, about 75% we fail in 1 week, and about 80% in 1 year and 90% in 1.5 years. So it's very, very difficult to maintain a lifestyle change without being helped, right? If you are helped with the lifestyle program, you could increase your chance for success quite high, 75%. I'm going to show you how. But before I do this, who wants change? Yeah! Who wants to change? This is it's a very simple picture, but I think powerful. We need to remember this. Or another one is, sometimes we are so caught up in the problem and we are trying to solve the problem with looking like this, and we are not open for an easy solution for our problem. Our mind is not open for the solution. These are some of the explanations why it's difficult to change. There is quite some more, but I'm going to skip them because I think we all know. We are all expert in not succeeding. So I was thinking maybe I put the emphasis on how we can succeed, even if it is not easy. If we don't make time for health now, we will have to make time for disease later. Because many people say, I don't have time for this. Yes, meditation, very nice, but I don't have time. And then we always say, meditate 20 minutes a day. Unless you don't have time, then meditate for an hour. Because when you don't have time, you really need it. You always need it, but even more when you're not out of time. So I'm giving you a very short summary of what we have found in the last 20 years of being helpful if you want to change your own lifestyle or the one you are treating. Maybe as a psychologist you are helping other people change. So I'm going to go quick because Lama is going to finish today, and then I go to the end, okay? So the first one, we need to know about it. If we don't know what's healthy and not healthy, or something is possible, we will not change. The second is, we need to be aware what we are doing. If we are not aware what we do, it's very difficult to change. So knowledge, awareness, then we need to make first analysis of what we are doing now. So make a registration of your lifestyle as it is now. And then registrate whenever you are successful in your change. So I want to go running 3 times a day from tomorrow on. Every time you succeed, you make a registration. Because if you do so, the chance that it stays is bigger. It's an evidence-based way of increasing your behavior. Then make sure you have the right goal. And it should be specific, measurable, acceptable, realistic in time, but also very easy to do. Don't make goals like that, but make a small, realistic goal and make sure you have a lot of effect so you can continue. So you take small steps, and sometimes these things can be useful, even though they are also difficult. Who has a counting of steps on his phone? Whoever looked at it at the end of the day and saw, oh, I have to go for a walk? Yeah, me too. So if we get a short-term feedback about our own behavior, then it leads to change. Because if we see, oh, it's like this, then we change. If we don't see, or if we only see a month later, it doesn't work. So they can be useful for these kind of things, also other ways of measuring. We need feedback. Then make sure you put some reward. If you succeed, that you're being rewarded. So some parents, for instance, they reward their children if they clean up their room or whatever. But you can also reward yourself. If you stop smoking or drinking, you put some money every day aside and you buy something nice. These are always evidence-based way of changing your behavior. A very important one is to integrate it into your daily life and to include people who are important to you. Because we are all social beings. And it's very difficult to change your lifestyle on your own if the ones who you live with are not changing. So make sure you include the important others in any kind of household. Because one person alone is very difficult to change. And make sure you integrate in daily life. So if I want to do more exercise and I buy a card with where I can go to the bus station, which goes every 3 weeks on Sunday at 3 o'clock, and I go to the fitness school, which opens only in the afternoon, the chances are not so strong. But if I go gardening, which I can do every day in my own garden, and I need nothing, and it's there, it's more easy to do. So make simple changes which you can integrate in daily life, and make sure that it is connected to something which is most important in your life. I always try to make a connection between a lifestyle goal and the view of life or the spirituality of people. So in what regard is this change you want to make, this goal, helping you to do what is most important in your life? Then there's a bigger chance for success. Continue for at least 2 months, because we need repetition to make things really sustain. And don't become an extremist. This one we abused this afternoon when I was getting chocolate cakes. I was caught at the bar. And then Elkena tried to help me, and she said, oh, well, this is the 20%. Because if you change for a healthy lifestyle, don't try to be healthy 100% of the time. You will never succeed, and you'll be a frustration for yourself and for others as well. So try to do 80%, and 20% you do whatever is nice. So I had my 20% already today. Don't become an extremist. Okay, so this is our program. We apply this to the lifestyle changes. And I'm going to finish with the whole program to give you just an idea. So the first step when we have patients is we do conventional plus. And this, what I mean here is, I started in mental health care 25 years ago, and then we had a rich array of treatments. So people could have hypnosis, or cognitive behavioral therapy, or analytical therapy, or they could have creative expression, or dance, or all of these kind of things. And I see now in psychiatry we are losing this. I don't know about you, but many people who get treatments only get cognitive behavioral therapy and medication. That's about 95% of psychiatry now. And I think it's a loss, because not all of the mental health issues can be addressed from a cognitive level. To some extent, yes. But when there's a very deep problem with trauma or early childhood adversaries, then we need to include also the bodily-based interventions to feel the body and the emotions, not only the brain and the mind. And there are many things you could do. So we think a normal clinic should be like this. But it's not so much anymore, so this is why we call it conventional plus. This should be the basis. On top of that, lifestyle, I just explained. I just want to say we are running clinical trials on mindfulness, on compassion, on yoga, and all of them are showing that people really improve. But not so much on their symptoms, more on their general feeling of being able to cope with life, feeling more healthy, feeling more joy, feeling more strength. These kind of things improve very much, but not so much symptoms. So we combine them with conventional psychiatry. Then on top of that, okay, I'm going to skip this for time. We thought practice what you preach, because it's not only the patients who are in trouble, it's all of us. So we decided to do a program for our whole hospital. And what you see here, this is our intranet. Basically the point is, we are all changing, not only patients. So all of the employees also work on their own lifestyle, and we do it together. And I found out that this works far more better, because it also is a way to show we are all in this together, we're all humans, we all have the same difficulties, and it's also more strong. It's just like practice what you preach. If there's one patient coming to the clinic, and I say, listen, you should do mindfulness, because I have read in a textbook 20 years ago that it might work for depression. If I say, I do this every day because I feel it helps myself, it's more strong. So all of us, we are changing. So what we did, we started in one small clinic, in my own clinic, but we are part of a very big hospital, and we are now training all of the employees to improve their own lifestyle. We have trained almost 200 now, and they are now changing it. They're putting it also to our patients. Then the first one is conventional plus. Second one is lifestyle. The third one is natural medication. And when we started with this, and Paula is also doing, I get ridiculed all the time. I don't know if you have the same. Ah, Rogier is there again with his herbs, I put the herbs in my dinner, not in my medication, things like this. Always making fun, but then forgetting that about 70% of all the medication we have nowadays is derived from plants. So, for instance, the strongest painkillers we have are derived from this plant, the opium plant, no? So, I don't care, we just continue despite the jokes. So we have 6 different categories of natural medications. It's herbs, supplements, vitamins, probiotics, psychedelics, and minerals. And all of them can help to a certain extent for some different kind of problems. But it's not only very easy, because herbs are very complex compounds. And there are sometimes almost 2,000 different factors within one plant, which makes it very difficult to know what will happen, especially for people who are already taking medication. So you have to be careful for interactions. But if you know about them, and if you do in a very judicious way, then for some people this can be very helpful, and even for some people this can replace psychiatric medication. Not always, but for some people, yes. And for instance, herbs, St. John's wort, lavender, and valerian, I have very good results with them. The supplements are here. Bernard know all about this. Also vitamins and minerals. Psychedelics is a whole story in itself. Maybe tomorrow I say a little bit about it in my talk about spirituality. And there are the probiotics. So this is the 3rd step. And if the conventional plus lifestyle and natural medications is not enough, then sometimes people like to go to complementary medicine, for instance, acupuncture or something else. And to do this in the right way, we make a protocol to make sure it goes well. Because I myself, I'm very open to traditional medicines, but it's not only always good. I've seen patients who had a lot of damage going to traditional medicines. I've also seen people with damage going to conventional medicine, but it's not always safe. So we make a protocol to have a maximum of opportunity, the maximum of personal preferences of patients, but still within the guidelines and still in a healthy way. And then some of my people say in my hospital, well, it's all bullshit anyway. Why would you concern about traditional medicines? If it would work, it would be conventional medicine. So if it's not, it doesn't work. And I don't think it's true, because there's a bias against some of the research on complementary medicines. And in 2005, the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology went to this lady, because she has found that in traditional Chinese medicine, there is a compound which is very effective against malaria. And this is a problem for many parts in the world where they don't have access to Western medicine. So she saved millions of lives for having a herb which is very cheap and very effective and everywhere available. So this is just one very simple aspect of traditional Chinese medicine which showed to be very effective. So I think we should just have an open-minded, evidence-based look and do research from whatever kind of therapy, if it's called conventional, traditional, alternative, complementary, I don't care. It just needs to be proven effective, and then we can use it. So we have been working for 17 years, and we have analyzed the results of all of our patients from the last about 10 years. So in this time, 2012 to 2022, we were referred about 1,700 patients. Some of them were only consultations, and of those who got into treatment, we asked them to fill out many forms about their health. And of those who responded, they were not so different from the ones who didn't respond. And there were also the completers. So you have to know, if you do questionnaire research, some people don't like to fill out the forms. And if only the people who think I'm a nice guy would fill out the forms, then you have a bias in your results. So you have to be careful to see if the people who did fill out the forms or did not fill out the forms, if they are different. What we found is those who were inside our data, so who filled out the forms, had longer treatments and more severe pathology. So if the results are biased, it would be an underestimate, because the most severe patients are inside our analysis. So how did it go? We found that people improve on all measures we have. So their resilience increases, their happiness goes from a 4.5 to a 6.4. For me, this is essential. We are talking about patients who are suicidal, who have an average treatment for 11 years before they come to us. They are desperate, and if their happiness goes from a 4.5 to a 6.5, that's really something. Quality of life increases, pathology goes down on all different measures. And if we ask them, how did you feel about being treated here? These are our grades. And if we compare them to the grades you just gave to psychiatry, which are almost similar to in Holland, people rate about 4 or 5. This approach people like very much, because they get advice on what they can do themselves, about complementary medicines, and they have a patient-focused approach. So I'd like to finish up with giving all of us a reminder of what is a healthy lifestyle. So I'm going to give you a mixture of evidence-based advice and common sense to remember us what is healthy. So my first advice is exercise for 30 minutes a day, every day. Eat a varied diet. If you like, also some fish, but not necessarily. And don't eat all the time. So fill your stomach with 50%, with fluids 25%, and keep it empty for 25%. Drink a lot of water, herbal tea, and maybe a little bit wine during dinner, but not more than 1 glass. Don't eat all the time, maybe fast sometimes. Make sure you eat a lot of fruit, vegetables, and legumes, because most of us, we don't do. Avoid too much starchy vegetables like tomatoes, corn, peas, pasta, bread, red meat, processed foods, and fruit juice, because most of us eat too much of this and it's not healthy. Eat local, seasonal, and try not to throw away too much, mainly based for sustainability. We throw away a lot of food. Avoid smoking, drugs, alcohol, and too much sugar and salt. Avoid chronic stress, meditate, create silence and reflection. Sleep for 7 hours following the natural cycles, because we tend to extend the day and go out working throughout the night, and then we cannot sleep. So we should maybe quit more early. Then limit your screen time. You're looking at news, social media, and sitting still, because we sit still far too much. This is the first one. Second one is, do creative expression, because this is so healthy, and many of the patients in our clinic work with this, because it helps with your healthy emotions. Spend 2 hours a week in nature. There's a dose-effective relationship until 2 hours a day, and have contact with animals and pets. Do volunteerism, be part of a community, invest in family ties, intimate and social relations, because they are very predictive of health. Ensure quality time with your relation, with your family time. Raise your voice. This is something about people working in lifestyle medicine. A lot of us are frustrated about the system. So I think we should put a lot of emphasis on our own lifestyle, but a little bit of rebellion and helping to change the law, the politics, the lobbies, the advertisements, and turn it to more healthy. Limit too much unnecessary traveling. Lead a simple life, a few things. Don't work too much. This is only to remind myself. I'm not an expert in this, so I'm reading this all the time before try to intonate it. But anyway, enjoy. Lead a meaningful life. Follow your bliss. I will explain this tomorrow. And follow the spiritual path that resonates with you. I think if we all do this, and we help this for ourselves and our patients, we will have more health in our lives. And meditate 20 minutes a day, unless you have no time, then meditate for an hour, because you really need it. Thank you. Bernard, you're really on a roll today. No problem.
Sorry if I'm being a nuisance. Candidly, how much confidence do you have in the psychometric? Candidly, how much confidence do you have in the psychometric measures you were quoting?
Is it really a question, or what's your opinion about it?
Well, the reason I'm asking is because in my related field, which is looking at criminal behaviour, the industry standard is using a range of psychometric measures, you know, for hyperactivity, blah, 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 blah. But when we compared them back to back with actual proven offending behaviour, you know, the correlation coefficient was less than 0.1, you know, which I think we can effectively call random. Now, the reason I mention it, you gave some quite disturbing figures about the level of suicidal ideation and attempted suicides, and that is quite a problem in prisons as well.
Yeah.
And I think we managed to get the only data set, and I'm ashamed to say we never managed to publish it for reasons that you know. But basically, we found no effect with ideation, which was based on questionnaires. But what we did find was in terms of counts, so this is when you're looking at actual events, people self-harming, cutting themselves, attempting to hang themselves, etc. There was a drop of 50% in actual counts of events. And this was based on an intervention where we were giving the prisoners broadly 100% of the RDA of vitamins, minerals, and about 1,200 milligrams of omega-3 in addition. So this is the big study that we never managed to get published. But I thought I'd mention that because the difference between the two measures, in the same way as with the criminal behaviour, was quite stark.
Yeah.
But the good news is that in terms of what they actually did, rather than what they think they would do, there was a really noticeable effect. And I think it's the only data that's actually done you know, can actually illustrate that.
Yeah, thanks, Bernard. I just gave a short summary for those who don't know. Bernard used to work as a scientist for many years, and he did a big study in the English jails with young people who were offenders. And what they found, which was a very top-of-the-bill research, is that when you give one tablet which contains all of the amounts you need of supplements and vitamins each day, and also omega-3 fatty acids, that the behavior which was really registered inside the jail, the aggression went down with 33%, I think, something. Sorry, violence, yeah. The measured violence went down a lot. And he's mentioning this because he's questioning, if you have only questionnaires, when you ask people how is it, it's not so reliable if you really measure daily activities, really the behavior itself. The difficulties is the context where you are doing your research is different than from a mental health hospital where people are outpatients. And we have difficulty, of course, to register their behavior. In my field, in this kind of research in outpatient clinic, this is some indication. But it would be even better if you could really register their behavior. This is true.
Unfortunately, you need very large numbers if you're looking at counts of events. But what I can tell you is in terms of the prisons, I don't think there's necessarily any reason for it to differ with your current group, but the effect on actual events involving self-harm dropped by about 50%. You know, even within the prison itself,
Yes. Yes, thank you so much. Any other questions? I think everybody is more or less satisfied with slides today. But fortunately, La Michelle will help us to integrate everything we heard today. So, you? Okay, sure.